Hello and welcome to Happy Cells and Souls. My name is Julie Powers and I am a licensed Zumba instructor and I am a business partner with the Juice Plus company. And my mission in life is to help people know that life is better when they're dancing through it and also to inspire healthy living around the world. But my expanded mission is to create better health at the cellular level and more joy at the cellular level. Because I believe that we are supposed to be joyful while we're here on this earth, and we're supposed to take care of ourselves as best we can. And so that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to spread as much joy and light and love in the world as we possibly can and be as healthy as our bodies can possibly be. So that brings us to these conversations that I like to capture on video, and they're basically just chats between me and people that I find fascinating or that are impacting the world in positive ways. And I just really am honored and privileged to have met so many different people from all different walks of life. And I believe that no matter where we come from, our backgrounds in politics, religions, social, cultural, work, it doesn't matter. We can learn from everybody as long as we keep open minds. And that is really going to segue perfectly into today's guest, who is Lee McCaskill. And I met Lee through a mutual friend. And I just have had a couple of conversations with you, Lee, and I find what you're doing really interesting because you have this amazing background as a microbiologist and an herbologist, and you've created a weight loss program, and you've written books on diet and helping people in so many ways get their life back together in terms of their weight and their health. But then you also have this Quails Nest Publishing company where you have a team of editors and proofreaders, and you're helping people publish books. You have multiple books to your name already. But the one that you're working on right now, I think just fits in so well to where we are in this world of ours, especially in the United States. But you grew up in Bishopville, South Carolina, correct?
Right.
And when you were a little girl, you had a playmate named Adeline. And Adeline Reddick is your friend that you reconnected with. And she was this little black girl playing with you, this little white girl. And you guys really didn't see anything strange about that at that time, right? But
No.
now you have reconnected and you are writing a book together called Colored Seated to the Rear. And my understanding of the book is that you are rewriting your history together from two different perspectives on, well, this is what I thought this meant, and this is how I experienced this versus how she experienced it, and with all of her background and her experiences. Is that correct? And can you just give us more information about the book and how did it come into being?
Well, how it came into being is I really just wanted to write down some things for my grandchildren about what life on the farm was like. And in the midst of that, my son said, well, Mom, wasn't that in the middle of when segregation was happening and all that? Didn't y'all not have black children near school? And I said, yeah. And so that's how it kind of all came into play. And then I thought, boy, that would really be neat to really capture the 60s, because that was when all the really good music was out with the Beatles, and rock and roll was really flourishing. And the music was just so good. And that was when segregation was happening. And that was when Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy were given these speeches that were just incredible. And whether you were Republican or Democrat, you still admired them. And I knew that it would be really neat to capture what a little white girl and a little black girl were thinking. And I didn't know, I tried to find where somebody had written about that from both perspectives and couldn't find it. So I thought, well, if nobody's done it, I ought to do it. So I called the library where I grew up, and much to my surprise, when I asked the librarian if she knew anybody that had grown up on my farm, the librarian said, well, do you know Adeline Reddick? She's my assistant. And that was the very little girl that I played with on the farm. So it was apparently meant to be. So I couldn't get back to Bishopville 8 hours away fast enough. And it was like we never left off. I'm 65 now, and Adeline's about 5 years older than me, but she was so tiny growing up. I've always thought she was my age. And we sat down and immediately started arguing like we used to. But we knew that we were on to something. And as we decided to take it year by year, and as we sat down and delved into the history, it was very apparent to me that what I thought was happening in her life was very, very different than I thought. And when I thought that my family was being good to her, she sometimes felt like that, felt very sad that she was never going to get out of the poverty that she was in, and felt helpless and hated us for it. And so it was very different feelings coming from both of us. And she had some very hard times, at times when we were writing, it would be very difficult for her because she couldn't handle the emotion, and we'd have to stop.
Right.
And then at other times I would get very emotional because I didn't realize what sharecropping truly meant. And I would get emotional because I was ashamed that I didn't realize what was really going on, or that, it was really glorified slavery. And I just couldn't believe that that was still going on. And so we both had a lot to get over. It was very apparent to me that when I lost a little brother and she lost her mother, that we were both going through the same kind of grief, and we had the same emotions growing up and didn't know what. We were getting over the same sort of things about the same time. Mm-hmm. And we both had dads that were really hard on us. And we knew that was going on because we both confided in each other. We told each other things that we wouldn't tell our friends of the same race, because it wasn't accepted to tell somebody that your dad was beating the heck out of you. So we tell each other that. And that bonded us even further. Some of the stuff that we went through growing up, our fathers would have been put in jail for now, but both of our fathers were very prominent in their churches and in politics. And that was not something we could openly say, but we said it to each other.
Right.
And so we had quite a bond. And then she eventually left and went back up north because she knew there was no opportunity for her here or in South Carolina, and actually got a little bit of an education. And back then, very few Black people finished high school, much less college, and she actually got an associate's degree. So finding that out, I was quite proud of her because she was a very smart girl. And of course, she lost touch with me. And then when I reconnected, it was pretty neat to find out that she lived on a road named after her father on a plot of land that was sold to her by my father. And that and I now own the property all around her that I inherited from my father. And so we see each other quite often because of that. I still sell plots around her, and she helps me sell it. And so we've connected in other ways since then, now that I know where she lives. But the friendship is just unbelievable. The excerpt that is on Facebook right now at N. Lee McCaskill, our author N. Lee McCaskill on Facebook, talks about a tea party that we had in the woods. And that section was actually written by Adeline. And she dressed up like Rosa Parks. And at that time in my life, I think I was less than 10 years old, probably about 7 or 8. I didn't know who I didn't know who Rosa Parks was. And Adeline got furious with me. And she said, I don't know what they're teaching you in school. I don't know what white people are learning, but you should know who that is. She was very upset with me, and it was on her birthday. And I was, real concerned that she was so upset with me. And I gave her something in a bag. I think it was a candy bar and a picture of a school picture of me. And it said something on the back like, you'll always be my bestest friend, or something like that. And so this year for her birthday, I gave her a Barbie doll of Rosa Parks. And unknowingly, I did not know that she had never, ever received a doll.
Oh, wow.
And she cried and cried. And, now she's about 70. And that was the first doll she'd ever been given. And it was Rosa Parks. And so it was quite emotional for both of us. But, we still have things like that are happening in our lives that would make another great book.
You know what I think is so great about this book and the way that you guys have reconnected is that I'm sure that in today's environment, where racial tension is just crazy through the roof, it's really hard for a lot of people to truly understand the other person's point of view. And so, I'm about as white as anybody can be. I don't even get a good tan. And so I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like for my Black friends whenever they have had some very, very difficult, challenging, and awful experiences in their life. Those are things that I will never have to go through, just because of the color of my skin and the color of their skin. And so I know that probably whenever you guys started working on this, you probably had some differences, and there are probably some very tense moments talking about just what's going on, right, in the news. But you were telling me that really it's that love and respect that you have for each other, that you were able to listen and really hear each other's hearts, where I don't think a lot of people would even go to that step. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sometimes when she's very upset and I don't understand, I really make her talk it out with me. I mean, sometimes she doesn't want to, and I'll say, you've got to help me understand. I don't understand why this is upsetting you. So sometimes it's a word, and I'll say, I don't understand why that word is so upsetting to you. And it'll be the very word I've used is very disrespectful to a Black person, and I would know it. So sometimes it's word choices, sometimes it's something that's going on in the news, and I've just made light of it, and it's something that is really hurtful to her.
Right.
And sometimes it's her. It's sometimes she's saying something to me that I find hurtful, but we always talk it out. And I just really feel like if there was more communication, if everybody had an Adeline in their life, there wouldn't be this racial tension. But she definitely has made a huge difference in my life. And one funny story is one time in the subdivision that my father developed that she helps me sell the lots, there was a man in the back that happened to be a white man that was selling drugs, and he just made a trashy place on his property. And it was getting hard to sell any more lots, and the Black people were really having a time with him. And so we were riding down the road one day, and I said, Adeline, would you like for me to go talk to him? Thinking, as the main property owner there, that might be a good idea. And she looked at me and she said, it ain't gonna do no good. He's just white trash. And she called her out, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot for a minute you're white. It's okay, Adeline. Forget you're Black sometimes too. But have a great time, with little moments like that. And we do forget the color of each other's skin, which is great.
Which is what we should all be doing, is forgetting that there's anything that separates us, because we're, if you take the skin off of all of us, we're all the same thing underneath. And, about 7 years ago, I remember I was at a conference and I heard one of the speakers talking about when he's from a foreign country, and he was talking about filling out some paperwork at a doctor's office or somewhere, right? And it says race, and you're supposed to write in your race. And he said, I just started writing human. And ever since I heard that, that's what I've been doing. Anytime that it asks for my race, I check other and I write in human. And I have actually had several people comment on that whenever I turn in the paper, and they're like, I've never seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, well, maybe we should all be thinking about that a little bit more, right? Because, you guys grew up as kind of little soul sisters, right? In this very tumultuous time in US history, for sure. And she had no idea what was really going on in your life, and you had no idea what was really going on in her life. You just knew what life was like when you guys were hanging out together. And I think a lot of times we write people's stories for them. We think we know what's happening. We think we know what they're going to say. And yet you have found that that is so different, right?
Right. One of the things that came out of this is she had a lot of anger. Her whole family had a lot of anger toward their grandfather that had left. They thought he had left their grandmother in Alabama and just abandoned the family. And her grandmother Minnie practically raised her part of her life, because her mother died, I want to believe, in her 40s due to cancer. And so there was when they never saw their grandfather again and left Miss Minnie with 5 children, it was just a bitter thing through their whole family. And so I had been doing ancestry.com on my family and found out some things about my family I didn't know. And so I said to Adeline one day, I said, why don't I dig back in your family and see if I can find the slaves, where they came from, and see what happened to your grandfather. And oh my goodness, this will be in the book, but her grandfather's name was Joe Jackson. And I thought, his name is so common, I probably won't be able to find him, but I did. And just by the grace of God, I happened to be reading this book called Slavery by Another Name. And this whole thing, I think, has been just this huge God wink, because how did I find Adeline? How did I find this book? And how in the world did I find Joe Jackson?
Right.
Been a miracle, a miracle. But I was reading this book called Slavery by Another Name, and lo and behold, it was about slaves that were taken from free men in South Carolina in the early 1900s when Joe Jackson was there. They were able-bodied free men, and they were told, if you'll come to Alabama and help us work the mines for steel for Pennsylvania, we'll pay you a lot of money. And they would take the wives to cook for them. And Miss Minnie was a great cook. So she cooked for the men, and Joe Jackson worked in the mines, and he only worked a few weeks and they never saw him again. He died of, what was the flu, the Spanish flu in 1918 in a prison in Alabama. They made him a slave.
Oh, wow.
Made him a slave. That it was not called slavery, but it was. And they would chain those men up and make them work in those mines. And so that's what happened to him. I tracked it down, and it wasn't that he abandoned his family. He was literally taken. And
wow. So that was a great experience for her to be able to have some closure around that.
Right. And so she gathered her whole family to tell them that. And so I was present at the time that happened, and it was a very somber moment. And, things like that just kept happening as we wrote the book.
Right,
That,
right.
it was like, what's going to happen next with this book? It was crazy.
Well, you know what? What's going to happen next is the book is going to be published and it's going to come out in like June, probably June of 21. And people will be able to get that whenever it comes out.
Quails Nest Publishing, but it'll be on Amazon.
Okay, so you have two options. If you're watching this, be sure to mark your calendar and be on the lookout for Colored Seated to the Rear coming out in June of 21. And you can find it at Quails Nest Publishing or Amazon. And Lee, it has just been a pleasure learning more about this book. And I hope that we can continue more conversations in the future just to get to know you a little bit better. And I hope whoever's watching this right now realizes that, Lee took an idea and she just picked it up and ran with it. And if you have an idea like that, maybe it's something that you want to run with as well. But if you have a story inside of you that you want to tell, maybe Lee is the person who can help you bring that to life and take it from idea inception into the written word and, get it out there for other people to share your story. So Lee, do you have any last words to share with us?
I just want to say that it's not as hard to write a book as you might think. I think people are just afraid of it, but it's not that big a deal. And that's why we started Quails Nest, is so that we could help new writers to walk them through the process so that they wouldn't be afraid. It's somebody taking you by the hand and showing you, okay, this is what you do next.
Right.
Somebody did it for me. And so that's payback. But Julie, I've enjoyed it and I can't wait to get to know you better. I love your mission statement and I just think it's awesome what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Lee. And thank you for watching, whoever happens to be watching this right now, and enjoy life.
Thanks.